If you look up this person's profile on LinkedIn, you are going to be incredibly impressed. It's VP, CTO, CEO. He has a huge pedigree of executive experience. His name is Ron J. West. I hope you all hook up with him. He is an executive coach, consultant, and speaker with the unique ability to inspire both corporate and individual transformation. After more than 25 years' experience inspiring change and growth in companies large and small, he authored a book, Corporate Caterpillars: How to Grow Wings. He's a TEDx speaker. He has helped countless executives effect positive changes in their lives and their organizations. Let's give a huge round of applause to Ron West.
So I'm basically going to help you improve your English accent. So the next time you show up for an interview, you're just going to sound really smart. You're sure to get the job. All right, let's see. So first of all, I want to bring your attention to the Velveteen Rabbit. Anyone had this read to them as a kid? Isn't it great? It's a fabulous book. Real isn't how you're made, said the Skin Horse. It's a thing that happens to you. When a child loves you for a long, long time, not just to play with, but really loves you, then you become real. It doesn't happen all at once. And generally, by the time you are real, most of your hair is loved off. Oh, this is hard. And your eyes drop out and you get loose in the joints and very shabby. But these things don't matter at all, because once you are real, you can't be ugly. The rabbit sighed. He thought it would be a long time before this magic called real happened to him. He longed to become real, to know what it felt like. And yet the idea of losing his eyes and whiskers was rather sad. He wished that he could become it without these uncomfortable things happening to him. Sorry, not possible. So I'm going to share with you how to get real, how to face something you've been avoiding, and use that to effect a change, a shift, a transformation, if you will. Because you need to change to find that next big thing and get you closer to where you want to go. How do I know that? Well, if you had already made those changes, you would already be where you want to be. And clearly, you're not there yet. So the next big things waiting for you, where you want to be, is very, very close, but what stands in the way is the truth. There's another important factor. This is the infamous book, Corporate Caterpillars: How to Grow Wings. So who would like a copy? No, who would like a copy? Who would like a copy?
I would like a copy.
Who would like a copy? Well, Jack Canfield taught me that really cheap trick a long time ago. So basically, if you don't take action on this truth that you find, then it's just so much mental exercise. So I'll share my wisdom, I hope, give you a process you can use that will help you face something, overcome some denial of your own, and grow and move forward and get that next position, accomplish what you want to accomplish in life. But you have to take action. So if you listen to well, it was this really nice speech, not sure what he said. It sounded nice. It was in English, so it was good, but he sounded really smart, actually. I think he wrote a book. But then you do nothing, then you've really wasted your morning. And that would be a crying shame. Because we're actually inside a box, each of us. If the air conditioning's struggling a bit this morning, clearly. We put ourselves inside these boxes, and the instructions for getting outside of the boxes we put ourselves in are really carefully printed on the outside of the box. That's why I'm here, and that's why people try and give you feedback. And that's why the truth is out there and not in here. What we need is a little help to read those instructions to get outside that box. usually so we can just climb into a slightly larger box. Oh well, that's how it works. So let me tell you a bit about corporate transformation and how this applies. I've been in the field of corporate transformation all my life, and what it is large-scale change. It's really whole enterprises, whole organizations going through like a big merger and acquisition thing, or shifting their whole internal culture, or trying to reorganize themselves and go global, or the industry is just collapsing, so they're shifting industry, something massive. And I've been involved in some great, great projects. And it took me a while to figure out, actually, no company, no organization will go through that kind of transformation unless the leaders themselves go through that kind of transformation. And so I took all my organizational development consulting, and then I became an executive coach and started working on executives. And of course, none of them are resistant to change. They're all like wide open to do things differently. So that was fun. And so, but it really is interesting to me. I spent all this time figuring out that companies are really very complex human beings, and that's a really simple way to think about them. And so I handled all of my transformations that way. Well, while I was preparing for this talk, I was looking through my stuff, and I realized something. I'd spent years with people like Jack Canfield and the like, stealing from the world of personal transformation and change, and seeing which parts fit well into corporate transformation. And I was sitting down here a couple of days ago, and I went, oh, there's some new material in the field of corporate transformation, and it fits right into this space here, right now. So McKinsey, well known for their research, have for years been saying that something like 60% of all transformations fail. So even if you listen to the truth, the brutal truth, even if you open up to feedback, and even if you take action to change things, transformation is very elusive and difficult to achieve. But they found some best practices that work really, really well, and I think they apply to an individual going through any kind of change as well. The first one is aspiration. How to put it? So, heard of the burning platform? You heard of that phrase? Terrible phrase. But basically, if you want to cause people to stop doing what they're doing and do something different, you talk about the burning platform. Because if you're standing on a platform and someone sets it alight, you're going to get off the platform, right? So that's the idea of that phrase, burning platform. It's used in change management a lot. Well, the problem with that is, to me anyway, I always see platforms as raised in the air, don't you? And so when you step off a burning platform, what's going to happen next? Yeah, that's not so cool. Okay, so the idea is, instead of being driven by fear, instead of moving away from something, how about we move towards something instead? What difference does that make? Let me tell you. Who really needs a job? Raise your hand now. Failed. Miserably failed. Who wants a job? The difference when you stand in front of someone and talk about who you are. I tell you what. I love it. Wait. Here's your first paycheck. Well done. Congratulations. I see I have the interactive crowd today. Okay, it's very good. Very good. I've got no more money, just in case. And I'm right out of books, okay? So, all right, where was I? So the whole point is, having something to move towards is very, very different. And the way you show up in an interview, or even networking, or just talking casually, you show up differently if you show up needing a job and desperate, and you know that. But it's easier said than done. But to shift that, get clear about what it is you really want. What are you here for? What's the big difference you're going to make for people? What's your contribution? I just need a job. I get that. Put that away for a second and tell me what you can do, what you bring, what are your special gifts. And that's going to get you the ideal position. That's going to get you the ideal career. It's going to get you closer to where you want to go. So aspirations first. The second, and actually the fourth best practice that McKinsey came up with was all around leadership and ownership. And this is pretty cool too, because if you think about it this way, I went through this really long experiential weekend thing, and we do this big meditation, right? And there's about 100 people in the room, and eventually everyone gets calmed down. And it's a guided meditation, so we're led through this fabulous process where you go down to the dock and get everything ready, you climb onto the boat, you set sail, see the sun, see the land disappear, see the land appear again. And then about half an hour into this thing, facilitator says, "So, who's driving the boat?" Oh, shit, not me. So unfortunately, what happens is we're in reaction most of the time. So not only have we got to get clear about where we're going, we have to take some responsibility, like we're the ones that has to get us there. We're the one that has to get up and go get that book. We have to take action, okay? We have to own this. It's not the world did this to me, so the world now owes me a replacement job. Nope, sorry, not going to work that way. The last one, this best practice that McKinsey talked about, was all around process, and that's what I'm going to show you today. Just a very simple 4-step process for getting real. Easy take-home thing. That'll be the closing part of this talk. Okay. So my daughter Laura came to see me just a couple of weeks ago and stayed for a week and a half. And I was thinking about this new material, and so I said, "So, did anyone ever give you any feedback that made I'm going to cry at this point, okay, so bear with me, that made a big difference in your life?" She said, "Well, yeah, actually, yeah." And she's 30 now. Yeah, I had children when I was 6. Thanks for humoring me. Oh, were you laughing at me? So anyway, I said, "Okay, well, tell me about that." And she said, "Well, I thought I was being assertive. I thought," she's a very good-looking gal, though I say so myself, and she's very smart. And she was afraid she wouldn't be taken too seriously unless she was very assertive. Well, she translated assertive. She obviously watched the wrong Disney cartoon and took assertive to mean abrasive. And so one boss sat her down, and bless him for doing this, he said, "You know, you're great. You do a fabulous job for me. I'm so thrilled, and I think you're going to have a fantastic career. This is one thing you probably need to be aware of. You're really abrasive." Well, of course, she took all that feedback, and she said, "Thank you so much," and she made it... No, she fought that for about a year, and basically ignored it, and then, okay, and then she got some other signs and other feedback, and we'll talk about how to collect and process that kind of feedback in a little while. But eventually she took all of this on and went, "Okay, I think I get it now. I need to shift what I think is this assertive behavior because I'm coming across as abrasive, and that's not going to serve me very well." So that's what happened. And so I wonder if you're telling yourself a story and whether you've been avoiding a certain truth. Because if you look back to the jobs you've had, even if you just voluntarily left the last one, there are lessons to be learned everywhere. Even if you stopped off and bought yourself a cup of coffee this morning, there are lessons in every interaction that you have. I had a great one. I was working in London, and the boss man, the chairman, went to work in a helicopter. Okay, real flash, right? Well, the only thing I knew about helicopters was that when the rotors are running, it's really expensive. And if they have to sit on the ground for too long, it gets really expensive on maintenance. Like big time expensive. So I was inside and had to prepare some papers and then get into the helicopter with the boss, fly to London, do this thing. And I'd given the task to an assistant. And the assistant was dutifully copying. But I was standing right behind her, tapping my foot. So, of course, the printer fouled and screwed up. There was paper flying everywhere. And the more she tried to fix it, the worse it got. And so me being so incredibly patient and understanding at that stage in my life. I can't believe I said, please step away from the copier. I know it's out of a movie somewhere, I shouldn't have done it, and I feel horrible to this day. And she did. She stepped aside, I stepped in, finished the copying, got on the helicopter, blah, 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 did all the stuff. But the world kept spinning somehow. Oh boy, was there some feedback waiting for me. And interestingly, none of it from the assistant, but from everybody else in that whole team. Every one of them sat me down at some stage and gave me a different version of that story. Big lesson to learn. Big lesson to learn. Okay. So if any of you go to work in a helicopter, make sure that... Okay, I'm just kidding. All right. So first thing, in order to get yourself ready to be able to take some of this truth, this overcoming denial, is awareness. So awareness is like the process of waking up. Awareness is having a realization. It's being wide open for something. And we probably all had some instance of it. But here's what happens to the human brain. It's really very difficult. We get into this mode of everything being automatic. We all drive, I think. Most of us drive. And so ever had that experience where you pull up where you're going and you kind of can't remember the whole journey? Like, how did I get here? Yeah? What's going on is your brain's figured out how to drive. So it's competent at driving. And now it's largely an unconscious process. So you're called unconsciously competent. You know what you're doing. What happens when you suddenly realize you don't know what you're doing is becoming consciously incompetent. I know it's twisted, but to go from unconsciously incompetent, like I don't know what I don't know, to consciously incompetent, like now I know I don't know, is the process of awareness. I didn't see anyone writing that down. It was so profound. It was. Thanks for being good sports. All right. So how do I get there? 3 ways. 3 ways. The first one's really interesting. It's force or trauma. So your doctor calls you in and says, well, I'm so sorry, Carl. I have some bad news, but there's some good news too. And the good news is, if you take immediate action and change your diet, give up smoking, stop those cigars, stop drinking that whiskey, and live a healthy life, you might last another 20 minutes. Right? I wonder why it is that statistics show that 80% of people don't take that advice. Funny. True. 80% of people don't take that advice. No, it's too difficult. It's really hard. How do you get from now I'm suddenly confident about my lifestyle is not serving me very well? How do I get conscious about that and stay conscious long enough to do something about it? It's like a New Year's resolution. How long do they last? Same problem. You have to take action. You have to get support for it. There's a whole bunch of things to do in order to accept this truth so it lands with you and then do something about it. So that's the first one, trauma. The second one is frustration. Absolute frustration with something will drive you to change. I came to America because I got divorced. It's a lifelong dream, always wanted to come, blah, blah, blah. But the truth is it happened when it happened because I got divorced. I was so frustrated at all the stuff around divorce, I don't need it, so I ran away, basically. Been here since. I have been back, by the way. So they do let me back in. But out of frustration of what is it? How did I screw this up? I finally came to realize, no, this is my responsibility. What can I do about it? And that frustration pushed me to write a book. It was kind of interesting. I went to a website. I don't know how I found this. It's writeabookinAweekend.com. Seriously, that's the website. No, it's true. And so I signed up, and you get all these little exercises, and you sort of map everything out and get a title and all that stuff. And so I wrote the book, The Perfect Life, A Personal Tale of Relationship Healing. And that weekend, like on the Friday night, there's a big call, and everyone's all jazzed up, and you go off, you sort of write until you pass out, and you wake up the next day and you write all day. And so you get these calls every few hours to get jazzed up again, and there I was. 7 of the 8 chapters done. Like, I had documented every relationship, at least my version of the truth, right? So it's probably why it sits in the safe now, and my shrink says I can't publish it. I don't know, but maybe it's something to do with it. So I couldn't get the last chapter out. I'm like, no, it's late on Sunday. I've done enough. It took me a few more weeks to use that frustration to push me to go, all right, so maybe I've got something to do with this. And I finally wrote the chapter that said, so what are you going to do differently? And that's what the last chapter was. And I've been living that ever since. Interesting. So that's frustration. That'll do that to you. The third one is inspiration. Maybe I can inspire you today. So we all get inspired, right? So I'm working with this great software company, and I meet this guy, classic servant leadership guy, just wonderful guy. And he's showing me around the company. Well, as we go through the company, unlike most CEOs, everybody comes up and says hi, every one of his employees. And they've all got a big genuine smile. Half of them hug him. I'm like, where did I land? This is Indiana, I should probably stress. Okay, so it's not the hugging capital of the world. It took me a while to figure that out, by the way. It was another story. So anyway, I'm walking around and watching him interact with everyone going, this is pretty incredible. And obviously I'm getting inspired by this guy, but he takes me into this huge room with a stage, about the size of this. Chairs are all stacked up, but I look and maybe it's double the size of this room. One entire wall is covered with photographs. It inspires me to this day. I walk to the wall with him, and I notice that the pictures of families on the same stage. So I'm looking at the stage and looking at the photographs, and I'm looking at how many there are. There's hundreds. And I said, what's the deal? He starts to cry. And he says, well, we realize that a lot of our people here have got some rift with their family. And so every couple of months, we just invite any of them that want to say something to a family member to come on and join us for like a big ice cream social. And if they feel compelled to say something, they just jump up on stage, say something, we take a picture, we put it on the wall. God, that's incredible. They started telling me about there was 3 generations in one family who worked in the same company doing all this stuff. Like, blew me away. Like, I've never seen anything like this. Now I'm crying, right? I said, you must feel so good about this. No. There's 500 people that work here, and there's only 300 photographs on that wall. The inspiration comes from all kinds of places, but inspiration is a great way to get you from this unconsciously incompetent to consciously incompetence, to accept some truth so you can begin to make some change, take some action, and do something different and get where you want to go. Okay. So I came across a great TED talk while I was digging around for this one. And Catherine Schultz, I think she called it the bubble of what? The bubble of rightness. Like we all live in our own bubble of rightness. Yep. It's taken me a few big occasions in my life to kind of realize, oh, that's not exactly true. And the way she explained it, okay, so it's the Roadrunner, and is it Wile E. Coyote? Okay, so it's chasing him, and then Roadrunner goes off the edge of the cliff, right? But Roadrunner can fly, right? His life is cool. But poor old Wiley comes up behind, and he's over the cliff. He's like, ah. Again, I think that was the entire story. How many times did I show? So what happens is we hold on to the fact that something isn't true way past the edge of the cliff. And we get feedback from all these different people, all these people that love us and care about us, or bosses or the fact that, oh, I'm looking for a job again, whatever it is, but we keep running. And we keep spinning our legs. Okay. So, inspiration, or frustration, or force, this trauma, any of the three things that can push you to get changed. But now we have to get real. So how do we get real? Well, we have to overcome fear. And I have a little TED talk out there on this, if it interests you. But the subgenial anterior cingulate cortex, you have to memorize this so you can impress people at dinner parties. I wonder if that's enough to get you a job. Well, I was studying the other day, the subgenial anterior cingulate cortex. It's a little, I know, I had to learn it like for weeks before I could retain it. Somewhere between the temples, about in the middle, is a tiny part of the brain that can override your fear response, your fight or flight response, enough for you to take action. And you've seen those situations where someone can be terribly afraid, but still tackle the attacker, right? So that's what's happening, is that part of the brain can override. And how do you do that? Well, you have to practice. You develop that part of the brain by practicing. And I'll talk specifically about how you can practice accepting the truth, being open to feedback, and then using it to take action to get where you want to get in just a second. So, we want to get out of denial. How do we do that? Well, first thing you need to know is that we are responsible. Now, this is uncomfortable. We are 100% responsible for everything that happens to us. Like, right. Yeah, this one's tough. It's a rather large pill to swallow. How can we be? I was driving my car, and this idiot just ran straight into the back of me. How can that be my fault? I didn't say it was your fault. I didn't say we were trying to put blame. Let the insurance companies figure that one out. What we're trying to do is to say, if you remain 100% responsible, then there is something you can do always, no matter what happens to you. You can take action. You can get the book. Okay? But it was a car, Ron, really. Talk me through that. I don't know about you, but whenever I come up to a light, I look at the light and I gauge, can I make it? And then I look in my mirror and I go, sorry, I'm still driving a UK car, so I have to remember which way to look for the mirror. My brain's got like 2 pictures in there. It's amazing. I don't know how I figured that out, but I get in a car in England and I just drive. Don't think about it twice. I come back, I get in a car at home, and I'm like driving around Austin, you know, with the other 10 million crazies from out of town. None of you, of course. It's just the new people coming, not crazy. So, so I'm trying to figure out what's the car behind me likely to do. And if I realize they're not so hot on the braking, they're trying to make it, then I'm going to make it too. I'm going to take that amber light, because otherwise I'm going to have this car behind me sitting in my back seat. And I drive a racing Mini, so it wouldn't take much to crush me completely. So, yeah. So being responsible is this accepting responsibility to take some action and assuming there's something you did to help set this up. Now, maybe it was a decision you made 20 years ago. Who knows? Maybe it was a choice you made 5 minutes ago. But you made some choices that brought you to this point. So you are responsible for those. Does that make sense? Not to blame, you're responsible. So if you can take that, accept that, and just play with that, as uncomfortable as it is, then you can open yourself up for some truth. You can open yourself up and give yourself a chance to overcome denial. Make sense? Yes. I'm impressed. Okay. I'm easily impressed, by the way. That was English humor. I'll explain when I make a joke. Really. It's okay. That was another joke. Okay. All right. So if you're not taking 100% responsibility, you are probably in victimhood. Right? And victimhood's a great place to be, because if you burn yourself with a cup of coffee, you can make millions out of that. Heaven forbid you trip up in somebody's parking lot. Again, big settlements. Life is good. There's no attorneys here, are there? Keep that joke down. So anyway, the thing about victimhood is we only ever complain when in victimhood to people that can do something about it and about things that can change. We never complain about gravity. Like, this really sucks that I can't just leap 100 feet in the air, right? Except in your dreams, and it's all topsy-turvy, right? But we don't complain about gravity. It's just, it is. But we'll whine all day. This coffee's cold. Well, warm it up then. You know, we've got this horrible thing where it's very comfortable. There's a huge payback to being a victim. You're not responsible for anything. So if you're not responsible for anything, how can you do anything wrong? Well, it wasn't me. I stood by and watched while it all happened, so it can't be my fault. See how that works? Yes. We'll see. So there's a couple of different ways to get past this victimhood. If you've slipped into that, and you know the story, it's like, oh, woe is me. It's all happened to me. Well, they had this downsizing, they made some stupid decisions, they invested badly, they wanted to go global and they messed it up and they just did. It's not my fault. Okay. Is there anything that you could have done that would have altered this outcome? Anything at all? Is there anything, did you see writing on the wall? Could you have done something to prepare yourself to step away to something else? Could you have done something for the company? You've done something for yourself. Could you have tackled this in a very different way? Could you have just learned a lesson from it? Have you learned a lesson from it? Did you realize what just happened because it had to happen for you to learn what you need to learn? And what we're really good at is ignoring the lesson and stepping straight over it. What happens when we step over our lessons? We come back and come back and come back. Anyone had that experience? I got the same stuff. I got the same boss. How'd I get the same boss? The hell, what's that all about? Well, you haven't learned to deal with that boss. The moment you deal with that boss and you handle it, and you handle yourself and your reaction to that boss and turn it into a response, you won't see that boss again. Ugh. I had a few like that. I kept seeing the same boss. I'm like, oh, the last one was called Sid, and Sid was a tyrant. In fact, I visualized him as a red dragon. It's pretty accurate, actually. An endless source of fire. Oh, it's unbelievable. The guy was 87, and everyone was afraid of him, including me. So I finally realized I've had a lot of Sids, like all my life. Right? So I caught him screaming at one of the assistants. It was so loud, it was ridiculous. The wall was shaking. Of course, everyone just cowered and ran to the corners. And I'm listening to this at the other end of the building. I mean, what? So I walked. Just walked in. I said, anyone want to be Sid? Who wants to be Sid? Anyone want to be Sid? No Sid volunteers here? Oh, I got a volunteer. Wait, I have to do this live. You'll love this. This is how you ready? I walked in. Sid, do you have a moment?
Sure do.
Don't you ever disrespect people in that way again. That was absolutely unacceptable. I shook all the way back to my office. I was terrified. Did he ever shout at anybody again in my presence? No. He didn't even shout at anybody again outside of my presence. He became a 12-year-old boy in an instant. And that was the 12-year-old boy that lost his father. Yeah, there's always a reason. Wow. A couple of ways that you can break this victimhood thing. One is to just be in gratitude for what you have. A couple of friends of mine booked a great vacation. You'll be able to sort the date out exactly because they flew to Cancun. Yeah, about 48 hours before the hurricane came ashore. And so, you know, they're up in this very tall hotel on the coast. They cause a big panic everywhere, like, ah! So they shove them all on a bus, and there's not enough buses to go around. It's a bit confusing. You can imagine the chaos. And so the bus sets off, and it's full of people. And the bus driver's clearly very disturbed because he wants to get home to his family. And it's getting late. So he randomly stopped at a school and dropped everyone off. not on the schedule. He just dropped them off at the school. So they went in the school, they climbed under the tables, and they spent the whole time trying to figure out what was going on. So, of course, they had their iPhone, and they're doing all this stuff. And then the iPhone became a torchlight, so the kids see their way around. This blows my mind, the things we're thankful for. So after all of this, they survive, thankfully, and everyone else in the school survives, even though the school is half torn down. And they come outside, and they're all like, wow, what just happened? And the whole of Cancun is just, you can imagine, just a disaster. What a mess. There's a guy with a little portable generator, and he's giving people free 10-minute charges for their iPhone so they can call home. Well, of course, Larry and Gerald came back and suddenly were so thankful. They went through the whole house, took everything out they've been stocking up for years and gave it to someone in need. It completely changed the way they live their lives, just in that one experience. It just blows my mind. But they were so thankful to have 10 minutes of charge so they could call home. Wow. So gratitude is one. The other one is helping someone out. And you've seen this, and you've seen the consulting firm that's sponsored here where you can volunteer to help a not-for-profit. Well, there's a very selfish gain in there for you too. See, one of the big things that happens, one of the things to flip you out of victimhood is to help somebody else. Works every time. It never fails. And it's not about, oh, somebody's worse off than me. It's not like that. It's just when you get into that mode, suddenly you're less worried about your own stuff and how you got there, and it's like, you know what? We're all in this together. And something very important happens, and you find yourself giving freely and sharing of yourself to people that really are appreciative of that. Makes a huge difference. So it flips you out of this victimhood so you can start to become 100% responsible. And once you become 100% responsible, then you can begin to take some action. Your awareness is increased. You can open yourself up for some truth, for some feedback, for a lesson that you should have been learning, and then you can take an action to address that in a way that will move you closer to where you want to go. That was really smart. Did somebody write that down? Because I don't think I could do that twice. Did it make sense?
Yes.
Damn. Somebody over there really got it. Thank you. No, sorry. No, I'm kidding.
Well, we don't know if we have fun Sunday, but I only said no because I've had the experience of doing volunteer work, and then again, I'm going to have to go back and think about what I. But feeling now like I'm kind of being exploited here. So what went wrong?
Yeah.
So,
It's interesting, isn't it? So, who's responsible for how you feel about anything? It's a very personal thing. That's the thing we carry. So I'd go look at that and say, so why am I expecting something different here? And the truth is, in some world or parallel universe, you were probably being exploited. Most not-for-profits are desperate to get help because they can't afford to pay for it. So in some, from their perspective, sure, they're going to grab everyone they can, and if you show you've got some skill, they're going to use it and keep using it until you burn out and move on to something else. Absolutely. But your truth is a different truth. See, I thought I'd explain all of this by explaining about the whole thing about the world's flat, and then, Columbus set sail and we figured it all out. So I started researching it. Do you know what nonsense that is? It's utter nonsense. So 2,000 years ago, we figured out this thing called Earth is round. And the only reason that the Queen didn't want to sponsor him leaving, because they worked out how much food he'd need to get to, and he was trying to get to India, and he'd run out of food and starve to death. He only found, the Americas by accident. And if he hadn't, he'd have starved to death in the boat. Anyway. So that wasn't a good example, and I couldn't use that one, so that's gone. But we at some stage, we being the collective, we believed the world to be flat, and that we'd fall off the edge and dreadful things would happen. And then we found some new knowledge and information and went, oh, okay, maybe that's not the truth. So what I take from that is the truth kind of evolves. And the interesting thing is, like, over time, like, well, wait, have there been other times in my life that I have felt exploited and not appreciated? Is that because I have a fear of being exploited? Because I allow myself to be exploited and I don't stand up for me? Do I not make it clear what's important to me and what I need? Is that where that came from? Don't know. And as all therapists got completely trashed in the opening speech this morning at $150 an hour, I can't help you there either. That's an English joke. I hope that helps. It's perspective. It's perspective on it. And it's saying, even if this is true, let me assume 100% responsibility, and then that will help me see if there's something I can learn from this. And as soon as you see something coming up 3 times, it's a pattern. Well, I have to say pattern, but if I say it with 2 Ds, you might get its pattern. Does that sound right? I'm trying. I've been working on my Texas accent, actually, but I finished every sentence with y'all, and it gets a bit tiresome after a while, so I stopped that. So I'm stuck with this one. I hope it's okay. All right. The other key thing, not just helping someone out, but the only other way to be able to accept the truth, accept feedback, and overcome denial is actually to find a safe place to be vulnerable. And the places you think are safe are not so safe. Let me explain how feedback works in the England I left almost 20 years ago. So on a Friday, the entire social life was structured around the pub. Life was good then. And so you'd go off down the pub and it would be great. You'd be talking about whatever and what kind of week you had and sports, and life would be good for the first 4 or 5 pints. Then it got nasty, because then you get the feedback. And the delivery mechanism was usually wrapped up in humor. So you go, ha, 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 ha. You start to go, and you'd be all offended like the next day when you woke up and went, did he really say that? Where did that come from? It's an incredible culture for that. So it's really brutal truths. Brutal. I wonder why we call them brutal. Yeah, isn't it interesting? That puts a spin on it. So how do we face these brutal truths? What is it we can do? Well, create a safe space. Well, where is that? Well, you might have a friendship with someone that actually is not very skilled at delivering feedback. Not necessarily very, someone's got one of those. So it's not necessarily a safe place. You may even have a professional relationship with a coach or a therapist, and you would assume that's a safe place. It has a chance to be. But running down the hallway and firing comments like, you sucked at that, that was terrible. Like, what? That is not helpful feedback for anybody. So if you would like to get some better quality feedback, some truths that you can use, start to do that for other people in the right way. Create a safe space first. Invite them. Well, actually, I have some feedback. I shouldn't do this. I'm going to regret this. I know I am. This is me regretting this. That's okay. But you might say, Ron, thank you very much for your speech today. It's very enlightening. There's some things in there I'm going to take away and be able to use. I did, however, have a little feedback, if you're open to that. And if I say no, I mean no. I had enough. I can't take any more. But the whole idea is, if you can set things up in a way, at least the setup, make the environment safe, then there's a chance of giving and receiving feedback in a way that might actually be helpful. But if you're trying to do it on the fly and you really haven't put any thought into it and you're just throwing stuff out, people are going to throw stuff back. And if they start throwing stuff out, you say, I have a little trick for you in the 4-step process. There is a way for you to handle that and take feedback on your terms, but only if you're genuine, authentic about it, and open to some truth. Okay. So the way to get some regular helpful feedback on what you're doing well, what you're not doing well, the lessons you're learning, is to repeat. If you have a dear friend that lets you talk, validates all of your nonsense, and then starts to challenge you, keep this friend. But keep going to the same place. Keep taking that same walk. Keep going to the same spot in the park, because you'll build a ritual around the safety, and you'll feel more likely to go to vulnerability more quickly. Does that make any sense? It's really tough to go to vulnerability if you're just caught on the hop and like, now someone suddenly says, well, let me tell you about my 3 divorces. You're like, ah! It's not the American way. Okay? Yeah, put the shell back on. The suit of armor gets clanked back on. So if you're going to take the armor off, make that the ritual. And go back to the same space. Go back to the same people. And that ritual that you surround that space with will make it safe and will keep it safe, where you can both be vulnerable. And vulnerability is the key to opening up to receive feedback. Right? You've got to be safe first. If you're not safe, don't do it. Don't open yourself up to feedback. You won't receive it well. Okay. A little warning, I guess. People are different. I know it comes as a shock. And we all think everyone's just like us. But someone said it earlier on. Yeah, actually, we're not. We're all really different. So, I'm trying to talk to this massively dominant and physically massive guy who happens to be a bodybuilder. So he's as wide as I am tall. I mean, big guy. And it's all like muscle. I'm like, geez. I start to coach him. I'm really not getting anywhere. And I'm like, wow, I don't know, understand what the deal is here. Because I came at it with a belief. And although I was creating a safe space for him, it wasn't quite safe enough for him to feel comfortable enough to share. So he kept his suit of armor on and showed no vulnerability for weeks. So I figured it was time to try and crack this one open and see if there was a gap in this suit of armor somewhere. And I decided the way I would handle this was to fire him as a coachee. Not his job, he was actually my peer. We sat down, we started the session as usual. It was a bit of a ritual. I'm sort of leading him in. And then I shoved everything across the table. I love drama. I just shoved it across the table and stood up and went, it's completely pointless. There is no way you're ever going to open up to me, and there's no way I can ever tell you anything that would land deeply enough for you to want to do anything about it. It's completely pointless. I am wasting my time with you. Shock. Then tears. Look at this guy. He's like a giant. He's crying his eyes out. And it took some time to get to that spot to figure out what was this all about. Because I'd always felt like this was a defense. Like I'm tough, I can take on the world, care, defense. It wasn't actually trying to keep other people out. It was trying to keep him in. His mother was physically abusive. And if he showed any weakness, she would attack. So he built this so that he wouldn't show anything. When he was worried about something, anxious, afraid, like, none of it would show. You're wrong. What a story. So creating a safe space can take some time, but people have different time scales. You can't create a safe space and go at it the same way. There's no easy solution that works for everybody. It's kind of different. Dominant people actually have a very hard shell. So you think that, oh, you have to push really hard, but no. When the shell gives, they're very soft on the inside. They're very soft and gooey. That's why the shell's so hard on the outside. Make sense? Dominant people are the toughest ones. It's a real dance to help dominant people open up enough to let some feedback in. But you must be accurate and very kind about it and do it in a very measured way. Someone that's more into, say someone that's more laid back or relaxed, you don't go at them with loud voices and moving quickly. You go at them in a very different way. So that safe space is different for different people. I'll say that. Okay. Let's have a look at how are we doing for time? Let me go into the 4 steps then. And this is all you have to remember. All you have to remember. The first one is the setup. We You have to get the environment right to be ready, and you know what that is for you. Can you get yourself in a place where you're ready to receive some feedback, some truth? Get yourself there. Very important, though. It's different for everybody, so you figure out what that looks like for you. Get yourself in a safe space first. The whole setup is really important. If you're getting some feedback from someone else that cares about you, tell them, I'm going to ask you for some feedback. But before I do, I want to make sure that's okay with you. Oh yeah, I'm glad you asked. Well, hang on a second. Hang on a second. I just want to set this up the right way because this is very important to me. You know, let them start to project all of their stuff on you, okay? Control the conversation. Step 2. You ready? Yeah. One person still awake. So step 2 is to get clear about where you're going. Not the burning platform, not where you came from, but where are you trying to get to? Because if you're clear about where you're trying to get to, an awful lot of feedback is probably irrelevant. I got some great feedback the other day. Fabulous feedback. I had just hired someone to do administration for me because I'm here to tell you, I suck at administration. I'm terrible. Attention to detail, repetitive tasks, no. I'd rather pull my hair out. In fact, I did. That was another English joke. Okay. So the interesting thing about this whole thing, well, I want to watch the time too. It's really important that step 2, you're not just clear about where you're going, where you're trying to get to, so that the feedback contributes to that, but you also need to say what you're working on. Why? Well, it's like that old thing. If you lay yourself open to somebody else just dumping all of their stuff on, most of it doesn't apply, and it's an insult. And the insult that I got was to tell me, and it was done in a really strange way. It was an email first, and then a very abrupt phone call. And they said, you're not attending to enough detail. You've asked me for the same thing twice. And I gave you this thing 3 months ago, and you're asking for another copy. It's completely unacceptable. I'm shocked, because I've just delegated all of that to someone else. And I'm thinking, how am I going to give them feedback? Because they're actually very detail-oriented. But I got the feedback and had no chance to say, well, actually, I recognize that as a significant weakness of mine and one that I've given up trying to do anything about. So I have hired someone to do that. I was very offended by the feedback, actually, interestingly, even with all my training and experience. I was offended. It took me a while to calm down enough to go, okay, need to find a way to feedback the feedback. Step 3. No, because interestingly, the only difference was one of timing. She would gain no value from the feedback at all, because I know who she is, and where she's going. It's not relevant to that, and she's superb at that detail. So I'm like, okay, thanks a lot. Didn't go anywhere. So you just bruised me. Faith in your assistant and absolute faith, and for good reason. I had facts to support that background and experience. Good question. Step 3. So observable behavior. What you're asking people to give you is observable behavior. Not their opinion, not what they think you should do. And that's the worst thing you say to someone, well, what do you think I should do? You're laying yourself open to all kinds of random stuff that's really just either going to offend you or set you off in the wrong direction. It's really not going to help. Someone needs to be clear about where you're trying to get to, what you're doing to get there, and these improvements, these changes, this truth you're trying to face, this lesson you're trying to learn. Then they can contribute to that by saying, well, it's interesting that you say you're trying to work on your authenticity of delivery on stage, and I get that you're halfway along this process, so you're open to more feedback about that, because I did see something today, I did notice today that there were times when you contained yourself from walking up and down quite so much and stayed focused and attentive to the audience. And there were 1 or 2 times where I realized you went into auto drive and you started moving more than blah, blah, blah. I'm making this stuff up, okay? Okay, I'm not making it up, but still. The last step is basically to integrate this feedback. So now someone gave you some truth. And you're like, okay, I'm ready for this. I set this thing up the right way. I've been clear about where I'm trying to get to. I'd like to move here in my life. And in order for me to get there, this is I think, a good step for me. What I'd be interested in is any feedback you have for me about how I can better do that. Or any ideas too, but specifically feedback and contribution. And then as you start to collect this feedback and you have this safe environment, you built a ritual around it, then you can start to integrate that and you can practice showing up in a different way. But it's practice, it's an experiment. It's not all going to work. But when you make a mistake, it's just another opportunity to learn.
So for number 3, you're asking for feedback on observable behavior that you can perform that will activate the change.
If you steer them toward, you'll never keep anyone contained in a strict box of observable behavior except a professional coach. So what you're trying to do is just get them to cut down on the volume of bright ideas and projection. Because the worst thing is projection. What you're trying to avoid is somebody just projecting all of their stuff. And you've been there, right? You're on the receiving end and all this stuff comes across and you go, wait a minute, this isn't about me. This is not mine. This is about you. It's about your fears. And it starts to pour out all over you. Not helpful. So what you're trying to do is, by saying observable behaviors, what specifically have you seen and observed that will be helpful to me to get where I want to go? Yeah. And then what you can do is take those in step 4 and say, let me try and integrate. And what you'll realize is, it doesn't all fit neatly. You just try something. I can only imagine what poor Laura did after she got the feedback on you're too abrasive. I bet she went full scale the other way, right, for a while, and got stepped on all over the place until she realized, well, I got to find out what assertive behavior is and make a little adjustment. That's all. It's that. It takes practice. Sometimes, the help of a coach or a good friend that understands these things, but what you're trying to do is integrate those things. That makes sense? 4 simple steps to face the truth. That's it. And what happens when we do? Let's finish off with a story. But the little rabbit sat still for a moment and never moved. By the way, I've noticed the English accent puts people to sleep. I was first of all appalled at this, and then I realized, because I went off and I studied hypnotism just because it was interesting, and I realized if you can get somebody into that state where they're not neither asleep nor awake, you can sneak messages in. So I'm sneaking messages in right now. The little rabbit sat still for a moment and never moved, for when he saw all the wild rabbits dancing around him, he suddenly remembered about his hind legs, and he didn't want them to see that he was made all in one piece. He did not know that when the fairy kissed him, that last time she had changed him altogether. And he might have sat there for a long time too, shy to move, if just then something hadn't tickled his nose. And before he thought what he was doing, he lifted his hind toe to scratch it. And he found that he actually had hind legs. Instead of dingy velveteen, he had brown fur, soft and shiny. His ears twitched by themselves, and his whiskers were so long they brushed the grass. He gave one leap, and the joy of using those hind legs was so great that he went springing about the turf on them, jumping sideways and whirling round as the others did. And he grew so excited that when at last he stopped to look for the fairy, she had gone. He was a real rabbit at last, at home with the other rabbits.